To Mrs. Lucy Porter in Lickfield. Dear Madame, you may perhaps think me negligent that I have not written to you again upon the loss of your brother, but condolences and consolations are such common and such useless things that the omission of them is no great crime, and my own diseases occupy my mind and engage my care. My nights are miserably restless, and my days, therefore, are heavy. I try, however, to hold up my head as high as I can. I am sorry that your health is impaired. Perhaps the spring and the summer may, in some degree, restore it, but if not, we must submit to the inconveniencies of time as to the other dispensations of eternal goodness. Pray for me and write to me, or let Mr. Pearson write for you. I am, and etc. London, November 29, 1783, Sam Johnson. It says here, I'm sorry that your health is impaired. Actually, Johnson wrote, I am sorry your hearing is impaired. So I guess Lucy Porter is losing her hearing. 1784, Johnson was 75. And now I am arrived at the last year of the life of Samuel Johnson, a year in which, although passed in severe indisposition, he nevertheless gave many evidences of the continuance of those wondrous powers of mind which raised him so high in the intellectual world. His conversation and his letters of this year were in no respect inferior to those of former years. The following is a remarkable proof of his being alive to the most minute curiosities of literature. To Mr. Dilly, bookseller in the Poultry. Sir, there is in the world a set of books which used to be sold by the booksellers on the bridge, and which I must entreat you to procure me. They are called Burton's Books. The title of one is Admirable Curiosities, Rarities, and Wonders in England. I believe there are about 5 or 6 of them. They seem very proper to allure backward readers. Be so kind as to get them for me, and send me them with the best printed editions of Baxter's Call to the Unconverted. I am, etc., January 6, 1784, Sam Johnson. To Mr. Perkins. Dear Sir, I was very sorry not to see you when you were so kind as to call on me, but to disappoint friends, and if they are not very good-natured, to disoblige them, is one of the evils of sickness. If you will please to let me know which of the afternoons in this week I shall be favored with another visit by you and Mrs. Perkins, and the young people, the pretty young people, I will take all the measures that I can to be pretty well at that time. I am, dear sir, your most humble servant, January 21st, 1784, Sam Johnson. Getting kind of sad that Sam Johnson's going to die. I mean, I know he died like hundreds of years ago, and he's pretty old for that time, 75. I'm guessing that's pretty, but it's still kind of depressing. I mean, he seems like he's got his faculty still. And, he's like me. He's a procrastinator. So, he's always planning ahead, going to do better. And now he's at the end of the rope. No more time left. His attention to the Essex Head Club appears from the following letter to Mr. Alderman Clark, a gentleman for whom he deservedly entertained a great regard. To Richard Clark, Esquire. Dear Sir, you will receive a requisition according to the rules of the club to be at the club as president of the night. This turn comes once a month, and the member is obliged to attend or send another in his place. You are enrolled in the club by my invitation, and I ought to introduce you, but as I am hindered by sickness, Mr. Hoole will very properly supply my place as introducer, or yours as president. I hope in milder weather to be a very constant attendant. I am, sir, and etc., January 24th, 1784, Sam Johnson. You ought to be informed that the forfeits began with the year, and that every night of non-attendance occurs the mulct of 3 pence, that is, 9 pence a week. On the 8th of January, I wrote to Johnson, anxiously inquiring as to his health, enclosing my letter to the people of Scotland on the present state of the nation. I trust, said I, that you will be liberal enough to make allowance for my differing from you on 2 points, the Middlesex election and the American War. When my general principles of government are according to your own heart, and when, at the crisis of doubtful event, I stand forth with honest zeal as an ancient and faithful baron. My reason for introducing those 2 points was that as my opinions with regard to them have been declared at the periods when they were least favorable, I might have the credit of a man who is not a worshipper of ministerial power. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, I hear of many inquiries which your kindness has disposed you to make after me. I have long intended you a long letter, which perhaps the imagination of its length hindered me from beginning. I know how that goes. I still, therefore, content myself with a shorter. Having promoted the institution of a new club in the neighborhood, at the house of an old servant of Thrale's, I went thither to meet the company, and was seized with a spasmodic asthma so violent that with difficulty I got to my own house, in which I have been confined 8 or 9 weeks, and from which I know not when I shall be able to go even to church. The asthma, however, is not the worst. A dropsy gains ground upon me. My legs and thighs are very much swollen with water, which I should be content if I could keep there, but I'm afraid that it will soon be higher. My nights are very sleepless, and very tedious, and yet I am extremely afraid of dying. My physicians try to make me hope that much of my malady is the effect of cold, and that some degree of, at least of recovery, is to be expected from vernal breezes and summer suns. If my life is prolonged to autumn, I should be glad to try a warmer climate. Though how to travel with a diseased body, without a companion to conduct me, and with very little money, I do not well see. Ramsay has recovered his limbs in Italy, and Fielding was sent to Lisbon, where indeed he died. But he was, I believe, past hope when he went. Think of me what I can do. Think for me what I can do. I received your pamphlet, and when I write again, may perhaps tell you some opinions about it. But you will forgive a man struggling with disease his neglect of disputes, politics, and pamphlets. Let me have your prayers, my compliments to your lady and young ones. Ask your physicians about my case, and desire Sir Alexander Dick to write me his opinion. I am, dear sir, and etc., February 11th, 1784, Sam Johnson. To Mrs. Lucy Porter in Lickfield. My dearest love, I have been extremely ill of an asthma and dropsy, but received, by the mercy of God, sudden and unexpected relief last Thursday by the discharge of 20 pints of water. Whether I shall continue free or shall fill again cannot be told. Pray for me. Death, my dear, is very dreadful. Let us think nothing worth our care but how to prepare for it. What we know amiss in ourselves, let us make haste to amend, and put our trust in the mercy of God and the intercession of our Savior. I am, dear Madame, your most humble servant, February 23rd, 1784, Sam Johnson. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, I have just advanced so far towards recovery as to read a pamphlet, and you may reasonably suppose that the first pamphlet which I read was yours. I am very much of your opinion, and like you, feel great indignation at the indecency with which the king is every day treated. Your paper contains very considerable knowledge of history and of the Constitution, very properly produced and applied. It will certainly raise your character, though perhaps it may not make you a minister of state. Ellipsis here. I desire you to see Mrs. Stewart once again, and tell her that in the letter case was a letter relating to me, for which I will give her if she is willing to give me another guinea. What that's all about. The letter is of consequence only to me. I am, dear sir, and etc., London, February 27th, 1784. Sam Johnson. Anyway, there's a footnote here about Boswell's character being raised. I sent it to Mr. Pitt, this is Boswell speaking, with a letter in which I thus express myself. My principles may appear to you too monarchical, but I know and am persuaded that they are not inconsistent with the true principles of liberty. Be this as it may, you, sir, are now the Prime Minister, called by the sovereign to maintain the rights of the crown, as well as those of the people, against a violent faction. As such, you are entitled to the warmest support of every good subject in every department. He answered, I am extremely obliged to you for the sentiments you do me the honor to express, and have observed with great pleasure the zealous and able support given to the cause of the public in the work you were so good to transmit to me. In consequence of Johnson's request that I should ask our physicians about this case and desire Sir Alexander Dick to send his opinion, I transmitted him a letter from that very amiable baronet, then in his 81st year, with his faculties as entire as ever, and mentioned his expressions to me in the note accompanying it. With my most affectionate wishes for Dr. Johnson's recovery, in which his friends, his country, and all mankind have so deep a stake. This is the baronet speaking. And now Boswell. And at the same time, a full opinion upon his case by Dr. Giuseppe, who, like Dr. Cullen, had the advantage of having passed through the gradations of surgery and pharmacy, and by study and practice had attained to such skill that my father settled on him £200 a year for 5 years, and £50 a year during his life, as an honorarium to secure his particular attendance. The opinion was conveyed in a letter to me beginning, I am sincerely sorry for the bad state of health your very learned and illustrious friend Dr. Johnson labors under at present. Doesn't sound like you're much help, though. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear sir, presently, after I had sent away my last letter, I received your kind medical packet. I am very much obliged both to you and your physicians for your kind attention to my disease. Dr. Giuseppe has sent me an excellent consilium medicum, a medical advice. It's been a while since we've had some Latin. All solid, practical, experimental knowledge. I am at present in the opinion of my physicians, Dr. Heberton and Dr. Brocklesby, as well as my own, going on very hopefully. I have just begun to take vinegar of squills. The powder hurt my stomach so much that it could not be continued. No shit. Return Sir Alexander Dick my sincere thanks for his kind letter, and bring with you the rhubarb which he so tenderly offers me. Footnote from Boswell. This is from his garden at Prestonfield, where he cultivated that plant with such success that he was presented with a gold medal by the Society of London for the encouragement of arts, manufactures, and commerce. Back to Johnson now. I hope dear Mrs. Boswell is now quite well, and that no evil, either real or imaginary, now disturbs you. I am, etc., London, March 2nd, 1784, Sam Johnson. I also applied to 3 of the eminent physicians who had chairs in our celebrated School of Medicine at Edinburgh, Doctors Cullen, Hope, and Monroe, to each of whom I sent the following letter. Dear sir, Dr. Johnson has been very ill for some time. And in a letter of anxious apprehension, he writes to me, ask your physicians about my case. This, you see, is not authority for regular consultation, but I have no doubt of your readiness to give your advice to a man so eminent and who, in his life of Garth, has paid your profession a just and elegant compliment. I believe that, and this is quoting Johnson here, I believe every man has found a physician's great liberality and dignity of sentiment, very prompt effusions of beneficence, and a willingness to exert a lucrative art where there is no hope of lucre. Dr. Johnson is age 74. Last summer, he had a stroke of the palsy from which he recovered almost entirely. He had, before that, been troubled with a catarrhous cough, Catarrhous, catarrhous cough. This winter, he was seized with a spasmodic asthma, by which he has been confined to his house for about 3 months. Dr. Brocklesby writes to me that upon the least admission of cold, there is such a constriction upon his breast that he cannot lie down in his bed, but is obliged to sit up all night, and gets rest and sometimes sleep only by means of laudanum and syrup of poppies. So he's high. And that there are catamentus termes, so Latin word, that Greek letter A-E, D-E-M-A-T-O-U-S, tumors on his legs and thighs. Dr. Brocklesby trusts a good deal to the return of mild weather. Dr. Johnson says that a dropsy gains ground upon him, and he seems to think that a warmer climate would do him good. I understand he is now rather better and is using vinegar of squills. I am, with great esteem, dear sir, your most obedient, humble servant, March 7th, 1784. I gotta look up what this vinegar of squills is. Doesn't sound pleasant, though. What was the other one? Dropsy. I think that's what it sounds like, but all of them paid the most polite attention to my letter and its venerable subject. Dr. Collins' words concerning him were, "It would give me the greatest pleasure to be of any service to a man whom the public properly esteem and whom I esteem and respect as much as I do Dr. Johnson. Dr. Hopes, few people have a better claim on me than your friend. As hardly a day passes that I do not ask his opinion upon this or that word." Dr. Monroe said, "I most sincerely join you in sympathizing with that very worthy and ingenious character from whom his country has derived such instruction and entertainment." Dr. Hope corresponded with his friend Dr. Brocklesby. Drs. Cullen and Monroe wrote their opinions and prescriptions to me, which I afterwards carried with me to London, and so far as they were encouraging, communicated to Johnson. The liberality on one hand and grateful sense of it on the other, I have great satisfaction in recording. I'll read this last letter. To James Boswell, Esquire. Phone's going off. Well, I can't have that right now. Okay, to James Boswell, Esquire. Dear sir, I am too much pleased with the attention which you and your dear lady, who had written him a very kind letter, show me to my welfare, not to be diligent in letting you know the progress which I make towards health. The dropsy, by God's blessing, has now run almost totally away by natural evacuation, and the asthma, if not irritated by cold, gives me little trouble. While I am writing this, I have not only sensation of debility or disease. I have not any sensation of debility or disease. But I do not yet venture out, having been confined to the house from the 13th of December, now a quarter of a year. When it will be fit for me to travel as far as Arnlech, I am not able to guess. But such a letter as Mrs. Boswell's might draw any man, not wholly motionless, a great way. Pray tell the dear lady how much her civility and kindness have touched and gratified me. Our paramilitary tumults have now begun to subside, and the king's authority is in some measure reestablished. Mr. Pitt will have great power, but you must remember that what he has to give must, at least for some time, be given to those who gave and those who preserved his power. A new minister can sacrifice little to esteem or friendship. He must, till he is settled, think only of extending his interest. Some ellipses here. If you come hither through Edinburgh, send for Mrs. Stewart, and give from me another guinea for a letter in the old case, to which I shall not be satisfied with my claim till she gives it to me. Please to bring with you Baxter's Anacreon, and if you procure heads of Hector Boece, B-O-E-C, Boece, the historian, and Arthur Johnston, the poet, I will put them in my room, or any other of the fathers of Scottish literature. I wish you an easy and happy journey, and I hope I need not tell you that you will be welcome to, dear sir, your most affectionate, humble servant, London, March 18, 1784. Sam Johnson. All right. Well, there's still quite a few pages left, but I gotta. So that, like, the last book part of this book is this index, which is like almost 100 pages. So gotta keep that in mind. Anyway, till next time. Bye from Boswell.